Welcome to the Win, Make, Give podcast. Chad Hyams here. Bob Stewart way over there. Bob, how are you doing today?
Chad, I'm good. So my Seahawks are Super Bowl champs, but here's something I realized. I woke up on Monday morning and my life had not changed at all.
Not a bit.
Like I still took the kids to school in the morning. I still came back and went to work. I still had basketball practice after. Nothing happened. There's no extra birds singing outside. I mean, it's a little bit, it's mostly overcast here in Seattle. Washington. Yeah, there's a little bit of sun out there, but I don't know. Like I was expecting trumpets and, flowers raining down or something, but no.
Sorry to hear that, Bob. Bob, Friends. Did you watch the show Friends?
Yeah. I mean, I was a bigger Seinfeld guy, but Friends was on before it, I think, or after it. I can't remember now.
Not the point.
Okay. Sorry.
You watch Friends. Okay. Bob, it was an argument for all the years of Friends, right? We had this argument back in the day with Gilligan's Island, right? Were you a Ginger or Mary Ann type? On Friends, it was Courtney Cox or Jennifer Aniston, really. Okay. Bob, which one?
Jennifer Aniston.
Where are we
going here? Where are we going?
We're going back to where Courtney Cox made her first screen appearance.
Wait, where?
On stage with the boss.
Really?
She was in his Dancing in the Dark video, as you'll remember. There were 4 women placed in the front row in various locations that were there knowing they might be selected. Courtney Cox was the one that he grabbed and pulled up onto stage for the Dancing in the Dark video and launched her career.
I had no idea that was a thing. I feel like I've been let in on like a piece of, I don't know, American cinematic history or something. Like, okay. Bob?
Wait,
and why does this matter?
Well, we're going to get to that. I want to ask you a question. Is there a musical group you have seen in concert, not listened to at home, anything like that? Is there a musical group you have seen in concert more than once?
So you and I were talking about this earlier. I think there's only 2 that I've seen more than once. I saw Metallica is the most. 4 times I've seen Metallica, and then 3 times I've seen the Dave Matthews Band. But I was searching pretty hard, Chad. I'm getting a little bit older. I don't think there's another one that I've even seen twice.
Yeah, I remember I saw Hall & Oates 3 times. And I saw Barry Manilow twice. Now I was 8 and 9 years old. I didn't choose to go to the concert. I was brought to the concert. And that's the most I've ever seen.
But you have a cheater one too, though. What's your cheater one?
I have David Cassidy, but that's because I worked with David Cassidy. So I got to see him sing almost every night. I didn't have to pay to go to those concerts. Our guest today, Bob, is going to blow your mind with something. And once you hear this, you'll understand everything that comes after it in the podcast, right? It's all going to be based in one place where it all gets launched from, and it's going to blow your mind with this stat. So before I go any farther, I want to welcome to the Win, Make, Give podcast, Andy Freed. Andy, welcome, and thanks for joining us today.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Now, Andy, we're going to put you on the spot in a moment and ask you to introduce yourself. We don't do bios. We don't read all those wonderful ChatGPT generated things that make you sound wonderful. We're going to ask you to tell us who you are. Yet before I unleash that, Andy, is there anybody you've seen in concert more than once?
There are a few that I've seen, but the notable one would be Bruce Springsteen and the E Street Band. But I've also seen Bruce solo. I've also seen Bruce with the Seeger Session Band. And yeah, I'm at about 95 times that I've seen Bruce.
Wow. Now, folks, is there anybody out there who's seen any band 95 times? I want to hear it.
I don't even
You got to come into our Facebook group and tell us. I'll make the post when this episode drops.
Yeah, and in the grand scheme of Bruce fans, I'm an amateur. I mean, they're
really
people who are well past me.
Like Bruce has like parrot head type fans that go to everything.
Who are well past me.
Wow. I never would have thought it. Bob, what's your favorite Bruce Springsteen song?
Oh man.
I'm putting you right on the spot.
Born in the USA is, classic, like as a kid growing up, and Hulk Hogan, and I don't know, like that would probably be my one. But there was one of his albums, I forget what the name of it was, would have come out like when I was in high school, the mid 90s. I loved that album. Man, that was a good album. Secret Garden, I think, is on that one. Or I don't know. Springsteen.
Andy probably knows which one it is, Bob.
It's probably Tunnel of Love that came out when you were in the middle of high school.
Sounds right.
All right.
I don't
Andy,
know,
what's your favorite Bruce Springsteen song if you had to pick one?
If I had to pick one, I'd pick Thunder Road.
Thunder Road. An excellent
Thunder Road has taken me from when I loved the line of your graduation gown lies in rags at their feet when I was coming out of school, to now I love the line of you're scared, you're thinking maybe you're not that young anymore. That song has stood the test of time.
There you go. All right, I'll just throw Born to Run in there.
That's such a great song. Like, I'm adding that to my Spotify list immediately after we drop off of here. Right. I feel like I haven't heard that song in way too long, way longer than it should have been.
I agree, Bob. I was thinking the same thing. I was like, that's not on my running playlist. I might have to look into that. All right, let's forget talking about Bruce Springsteen just for a moment. Folks, we'll come back to it. You'll see why as we get into it. Andy, would you do us a favor and introduce yourself to the Win Make Give audience?
Yeah, in addition to being somebody who is, kind of this close to selling everything he owns and just following Bruce Springsteen and the E Street Band around the country, I am the chairman of an organization called Virtual. We basically run tech industry consortia and associations out of the Boston area. We run about 90 groups worldwide that do everything from enabling mobile payment to keeping credit cards secure. So we've done that. I've been at that for about 25 years.
Wow. Amazing. All right. So Andy, you've got a book that I think you said to me actually just released yesterday when we were recording this. Is that correct?
That's correct. Just came out February 10th.
Okay. So folks, I don't know when we always say we don't know when Dave drops this, yet you can go on Amazon very easily and find Lead Like the Boss. And the Bruce Springsteen framework to elevating your leadership, written by Andy Freed. There's 2 E's in Freed. I don't know how else you might spell it. I just want to make sure that you get it right. Andy, I usually give Bob question number 1, yet who goes to 95 Bruce Springsteen concerts and comes away with leadership lessons?
Yeah, at some point of those shows, I started learning something. And, maybe it was that I was leaving a show in Phoenix, Arizona once and felt like, boy, I got to justify this trip out here. So I wrote a little post on Facebook of some of what I took away from watching the Bruce, not just as a band leader, but as the boss, and what I took away from leadership on him. And there's so many things when I started watching him and watching the way he conducts himself on stage, watching the way he puts a show together, that it can apply to any leader. So that's what Lead Like the Boss is all about, is how do you take those things and apply them to any leadership situation?
Can you educate me a little bit, Andy? Where did that nickname come from? Like, why is every single one of us, if we grew up in, he's the boss, right? But I've never questioned, like, well, why do they call him that? Like, do you know where the nickname kind of originated from?
Yeah, it started from his band, because he realized that he looked at all these bands in the 60s and the 70s and said, they need like a lightly controlling hand to keep them out of trouble. And somebody's got to be the one that tells them, no, you can't have pot on the front seat of your car and leave it parked in a public parking lot. No, you can't miss rehearsal. And somebody had to be the boss. So he recognized in his band that it wasn't going to be all of them as co-equals. Somebody had to step up. And the band realized that too. And the nickname stuck.
I love that. Because even, you go back, you think like, you look at some of these big corporate, Ernst & Young, like partner, when you have partners, which is essentially what a band is a bunch of partners, they still nominate the managing partner, the directing partner, or whatever it is, right? Somebody ultimately has to be the boss. I love that. Okay. Thank you for that.
And in some cases, nobody's the boss. And that's where Hall & Oates splits up.
Yes.
That's why you don't see them anymore.
That's right.
That's why you see Hall talking about how I wrote all the songs, not Oates.
Yes. Now we get into all of that stuff that comes along the way. All right. So let's get into it. I mean, I don't know that there's going to be anybody who listens to the podcast that hasn't heard a Bruce Springsteen song, whether you don't realize it or not, right? He's been playing for way too long. I mean, I'm not saying that in a bad way, that everybody recognizes the boss, knows the nickname, as Bob said, knows at least one, if not multiple of his songs. You found leadership lessons that came from the experience of going through it. And Bob said to me before the call, Chad, why'd you book this guy? Because I'm the one who does the book. I said, Bob, you'll see. I mean, this is a very different angle than we've ever had when we talk leadership. Let's start learning some of the lessons that you've taken away from the boss that generated you writing a book. Let's talk about some of them that's going to make people say, I got to read the rest of this book.
Yeah, so I'll start with one that's kind of starting with the end of the concert. And the book follows the arc of a Bruce Springsteen concert from start to finish. But let's start at the end, because that's really, for me, when I had the epiphany, was watching a show. And I was watching the whole show, and at the very, very end of the show, it's no song, but it's what Bruce does. It's that he goes to the back of the stage and shakes the hand of everybody as they come off the stage and says something to them about how they had a great show that night. And those are people that he might have played with. In the case of Gary W. Talent, he's played with Gary Talent for 55 years. But there's other people that just joined the band on this tour, and he had 19 people on stage at this tour. And when you hear them talk about that moment, what they say is, for 20 seconds every night, Bruce Springsteen makes me feel like the most important musician on the face of the earth. Isn't that what we're supposed to do as leaders? Make our team feel like the most important people on the face of the earth? And that Bruce thinks of doing that, does it consistently every night, adapts it for each band member. You know, he knows that this one gets a hug, this one gets a high five, this one gets something whispered in their ear. Makes it matter for them and makes them feel valued. And that even as long as they've been playing with them, that's still an important moment for them. That's the kind of thing we're supposed to be doing as leaders. That's what makes you the boss, and that's what makes you the boss for 50 years. And that's what when I started to see that, I started to send a note to my chief of staff saying, help me be this good. I want to be this good with our team and have them feel this appreciated. And that's just one of the many lessons I think you can take away from how he's conducting himself on stage.
It makes me wonder, and I would have to assume the answer is like yes, but the guy he's played 55 years with, I would bet still to this day, like he finds something unique and meaningful to say to that guy each time he comes off the stage, even though he's probably done it thousands of times and had to think of, 1,000 different ways to make that guy feel important.
Absolutely. And you watch other bands at the end of the show, they scatter. And that's where you get to, sometimes it's like the old Red Sox aphorism of 27 players and 27 cabs. But that's part of how the E Street Band stayed together for 50 years. Is you have somebody, and you asked the question earlier, how is he why is he the boss? That's what does it. Somebody who takes charge of that and makes people feel valued. And that was just the first of the leadership lessons that I learned. And then I started delving deeper into it and seeing more.
I want to go deeper on that one before you go on to another one. Tell me, I mean, that sounds like the entrepreneur or the chef should be standing at the door at the end of every shift and just, telling every sous chef and whatever on the way, wow, your sauces were awesome tonight or whatever. What did you do? You said you went to your chief of staff and said, I want to be that. Give us some real world examples, because we have so many leaders on our call that they can apply to their world to be more like the boss, because they don't necessarily have a concert that ends. So I have the chance to give everybody the congratulations in their own way right there.
Yeah, there are so many things you can do, and I've got lists of them in the book. But it's everything from sending that email of just when you see catch some it's what the 1 Minute Manager's mission was to catch somebody doing something right. So you see something, sending an email of just, hey, this was great, saw it. Printing out that email and just writing a little note on it and leaving it on somebody's desk. Just taking that moment of being present to tell people that the work that they do matters. And so much of this is that idea of just being present. You mentioned that not everyone has a concert, not everyone has that moment on stage. That's true. But if you're a leader, somebody's performance review or coming in to see the weekly check-in with their manager, that is for that employee every bit as important as a concert. That's their moment. And if you take that moment to kind of single out something and say, I caught you doing something right and you matter to us, that can really be a meaningful thing for that person.
Chad, it makes me think, I've talked about this before on the podcast, but back in our Active Rain days, I used to proactively find one person to just go and like every day I would try, Andy, to find one of our customers to go like unintentionally wow. And I think we could be doing that with our employees, right? Like, I mean, Chad, our organization has 1,000 people. I could easily, and I probably should, just decide each day I'm going to find somebody to praise or pour into or commend for a job well done. I think that if we keep going on this one a little bit, I think one of the fascinating things about the way Springsteen does it, because Andy, he could easily do it after the show off stage, but he clearly has made a purposeful decision to publicly do this and acknowledge these people at the end of the show publicly, right? Like, because they could easily just walk off stage and then he could go backstage and shake everybody's hand and say thanks. But he's making I don't want to call it a spectacle because that tends to be kind of thought of negatively, but he's making a spectacle of it so that they can feel the love of the crowd and all of those things and publicly be recognized. Am I right or am I wrong there?
And that's absolutely right. And that's, one of the other aphorisms of management is, praise publicly and criticize privately. And understanding how important that is something which, can really matter to folks. So, doing that and just connecting with folks and what you were saying earlier of, picking somebody every day. I mean, William James wrote 100 years ago that the deepest human need is the need to be appreciated. Think about that. The deepest human need, more than sex, more than money, more than anything, the deepest need is the need to be appreciated. As managers, we have the opportunity to be the ones that fulfill that. And that's something which I think we should take really seriously as a responsibility as leadership.
In my company that I run, I do it every day. I praise the employee of that company every day. Of course, it's an employee of one, and it's me. Yet, high five me. Good job today. All right. So, Andy,
our listeners, Andy, by the way, know that Chad doesn't praise anybody but himself. So
I don't want to go too deep on the topic of Chad and self-love.
Hey now. All right. Let's move on. So what I heard in there, though, Andy, and I love this, you said he knows his people well enough. This one gets a high five. This one gets a handshake. This one gets a whisper in the ear. Basically, he knows their love languages of the time or the touch or whatever it could be. How important is that we know the ones that want the hug versus the ones that are like, shake my hand, yes, but don't hug me. That's going to bug me.
That's one of those things that we started to lose during COVID is also losing people's backstories. And I think that, for me, when I have a meeting, sometimes the most important parts of the meeting are the 5 minutes before the meeting officially starts and the 5 minutes after, because that's when you're sitting in the conference room and you're asking people, how was your weekend? What's going on with you? You're killing time before other people show up, but you're also learning things and building trust and relationships. And you can reinforce that at the end. And too often I've been to calls and meetings where the whole meeting takes place, and then in the hallway afterwards, somebody says, well, I don't agree with anything that was said in there. And that's really when you start getting into the conversation. But building that trust and relationships and knowing people's backstories, that's such an important thing for every manager and every leader. Understanding who the people are and being truly interested in that. One of the other aphorisms that I would say is we spend a lot of time and too much time trying to be interesting. We just spend a lot more time just being interested. If we're interested in the people around us and interested in kind of what they bring to the table, the world's a much better place.
I couldn't agree more. I think it gets to, people want to be led by somebody they find is authentic. And I think, showing up as interested makes you seem a lot more authentic to people. Like,
and go back to Bruce on that. So look at Bruce. Bruce has never worked a day in his life, really. He's never worked in a factory, but that's all he's ever written about. He's never been a blue collar worker, but that's all he's ever written about. The reason is because he's been interested and he's talked to folks and he learns their language and he learns what matters to them. You mentioned, your favorite song is Born in the USA, which is a great song about it's a soldier's story about coming back from the Vietnam War and being disenfranchised. He learned that from talking to soldiers and going to Vietnam Going to veterans hospitals and hearing their stories. That idea of the leader as listener is so important. I mean, that's such a kind of underrated skill in communication, of understanding your audience, understanding those around you. And that's really what he's doing. Is when you look at it, he understands that he has an audience of 20,000 on one side of the stage. And when he gets to the back of that stage, he has an audience of one, the person that he's talking to thank. And he's got to know both those audiences really well.
I think that's, you said something in there that, here's what I think you've just shattered what a lot of people think Born in the USA is all about. Right. I think almost everybody thinks it's some positive, uplifting anthem song. Yeah. Why? Because Hulk Hogan comes running out onto the ring with that song playing.
That's what 8-year-old me thought, right? Like watching
Until
Hulk Hogan
you sit there and listen
the
to the lyrics and understand what the song is truly about. I think I was shocked. So, folks, we're bringing you value today, whether you didn't know what Born in the USA was about or Courtney Cox showing up in his videos. We're going to bring value.
So you've been to 195, whatever the number is, concerts of this guy, and then you sat down to write a book. What was something that you learned in the process of writing a book that you didn't really think would become a part of this book after having had the experience of 95 concerts? Like, was there anything that as you started to kind of deeply do the research, like shook out and you're like, wow, I wasn't expecting that?
Before you answer that, Andy, I want to throw just kind of a step into that. How many concerts into it were you where you started to say, I'm going to write the book? And then did the concerts also start to change because you were looking at them differently than just as a fan as you're answering what Bob was asking?
So to answer your question, probably about 70 shows in. Okay. So it's probably about 20 shows where I kind of had the book or something like that in mind. But kind of to answer your question, Bob, what I'll say is what struck me was the completeness of it all. I mentioned the end of the show. Let's talk about the beginning. And what struck me was that the show doesn't begin. And I kind of, researched this and learned this more and, saw interviews with Bruce where he was talking about it. But the show really begins when Bruce is sitting in his dressing room and he takes out a white piece of paper and a pen and he writes out the set list for the show.
So he's not doing the same set list again and again.
It's different every night, but it's also that set list isn't just a set of songs. That set list becomes the story he wants to tell. What's the story of this show? He also thinks about what does he want his audience to think, feel, and do.
Is this common? Or is this super uncommon? That's shocking to me that he's creating the set list before every show.
Completely uncommon, Bob.
Yeah, I think it's different for different artists. But I think in Bruce's case, he's trying to tell a story. And he's also thinking about along the way, what's he want the audience to do? Are there moments that he wants the audience to be up and crazy? Are there moments that he wants the audience to be in their seat more reflective because he's going to tell a story? And how does his set list reflect that? That's different than just getting up on stage and playing. It's very intentional. And I'll say, when I think about that with leaders, how many of us are guilty of, we've got a staff meeting coming up. So we'll say, we had a staff meeting last month too. I'm going to open last month's PowerPoint, change the date of the file name, and just start cranking out slides. And then you have the staff meeting, and afterwards you ask somebody who was at the meeting, what was that meeting about? And they say, I don't know, same old stuff. Think about that differently of if your first step was to take out a blank sheet of paper and say, when somebody leaves this meeting, what do I want them to say happened in it? And what's the thing I want them to think coming away from this? And that's really thinking about your set list for the, for that meeting. It's like, what do I want it to be? What do I want the end to be before I start cranking out slides? Because cranking out slides is like Bruce just getting up on stage and just jamming. And that works for the Grateful Dead, but it doesn't work for everybody.
It's funny, Chad, because so we have our partner in our businesses and in the Win Make Give podcast. He was kind of here in the early seasons, a guy named Ben Kinney. And Chad, Ben's has the set list. If you've been I've been in his world for 15 years, he's got a set list. And when you show up in the meeting, it's not uncommon that I hear him say something that he said 50 times before, but he is a master at putting the set together, right? And it's very rare that we walk out of a meeting, I'm like, I don't know what that was about. I can't remember the last time it's happened. It's probably been 15 years, right?
And I want to pick up on something you just said, Bob, like something he said 50 times before. Leaders often hate that. Leaders hate repeating themselves. And yet we know from science that people need to hear something 7 times before they remember it. And yet we hate repeating ourselves. So often a leader will say something 2 or 3 times and then say, I got to change it up. Well, that's like, giving up on your antibiotic before the kind of recommended dose. You've given up too soon. Now compare that to Bruce. Bruce has played Born to Run 1,878 times live as of today. And every time he does, he gives it his all because he knows that there's somebody in the audience who's never been to a show before, and they're hearing it for the first time. And then he also knows there's somebody like me out there who's comparing it to the other 94 times he's heard Born to Run, and he's got to make sure that he shows that he hasn't lost his fastball. Leaders could kind of take a lesson from that as well, of have a message, lean into it, and be willing to repeat it. It's all right if you said the same thing 50 times, because now Bob knows what it is and understands kind of what it is. And communication's actually taken place versus I say it once and I change it up. And Bob says, I don't know, we talked about something. I'm not really sure. It's different today.
Here's the thing about that too, Andy, is I don't know where the tie-in is to Bruce playing the same song over and over, but like there are times in my world where I hear something for the 48th time and that's the time it finally sinks in, right? Absolutely. I'm like, oh, that I've heard it a whole bunch before. I just wasn't ready for it yet.
Absolutely.
This has been my wealth journey with
movie or listen to a song and you're like, nah, they changed the lyrics, right? Or they didn't say that line in the movie before, even though you've seen it 100 times. Because you're in the right place to hear something, or you hear a lyric and you're like, oh my gosh, that's what they've been saying. That makes so much more sense than what I thought the words were. Andy, you said you threw it away, and I don't want to let you throw it away. You said something about think, feel, do as you were talking about Bruce. Can you go a little bit deeper into those 3 words? Because I think there's more to it. When someone just throws out think, feel, do, there was something to it. I scribbled it down. Talk more about that.
To me, that's the central thing every leader should talk about and think about before they start communicating. You start with what do you want your audience to think? And whether your audience is 1 or your audience is 1,000, it's, and think is kind of on the level. What's the thing I want them to come away with? If they've missed the meeting, what do I want them to say? But the next piece is feel. And a lot of leaders think that's not their job, that's too touchy-feely. Feelings aren't what it's all about. But if you haven't thought about how your audience feels, they might not be ready to hear you. And you've got to get them in a place where you've helped them feel safe enough to hear some messages, or you understand where they're coming from. And I use an example in the book of just talking to a company about we're changing health insurance plans. If I just come in and say, we're changing plans, here are the deductibles, go. For my employees, what they're worrying about is, this is my health insurance. This is how I take care of my kids. So I take care of myself. This matters to me on a personal level. I've got to make sure that I'm saying to them, I understand that. And that I understand that this is deeply personal to you, and address their feelings. And then the do part is often left ambiguous by folks. They feel like, hey, we've told you kind of a little bit about what's happening. Now go figure it out. People need explicit instruction on what they're supposed to do. So if a leader thinks about those 3 things, thinks about on the level, what I want people to think, how do I get them ready to hear that by thinking about their feelings and understanding what I want them to feel, and then what the action step is of do, that's complete communication. And that's what Bruce is doing in the set list, and that's what every leader should do when they create the set list for their communication.
I love it. The thing I might add there is like the to do, that last piece, at least in our world, it doesn't always have to be like, what are the, like you're going to do A, B, C, D, because a lot of times Ben will come to us and it's like at the end, right? He wants us to do the thing. We always talk in our world about like, he'll give us eggs and he doesn't want like a bunch of cracked eggs back. He wants like an omelet back. And so the do doesn't have to be, here's how you make an omelet. The do can be, hey, I need an omelet back. And depending on who you're leading, you want them to be able to go and figure out how to make the stinking omelet, right? Yeah. But they need to know coming out of the meeting, like, we want an omelet back. which sometimes we don't. We're just like, hey, here's a bunch of eggs. Like, good luck. I love that.
And sometimes that can be breaking it down for people. Sometimes it's going to be, hey, I want an omelet back. Listen, you guys in marketing, you guys just need to crack some eggs. Like, for the next 6 months, you're going to crack some eggs. But I want you to understand why you're cracking those eggs. You're cracking those eggs because we're going to get in the omelet business. And that's what we're all about. And helping make that connection for them is so important. But if you just leave it as, yeah, we're in the omelet business now, I'm expecting to see some omelets, and let's hope that happens. You might not get what you're expecting. Everyone might be cracking the eggs and nobody's firing up the stove.
We're talking with Andy Freed, the author of Lead Like the Boss, the Bruce Springsteen framework to elevating your leadership. Now, Andy, here's something I know. Just like we have parrot heads and you got the people who follow the Grateful Dead, you were saying Bruce has a following like that. First of all, do they have a weird nickname?
There's a group out there called the Spring Nuts, which is probably the closest. But It's really just those following Bruce.
How does Bruce create those types of followers that we can also as leaders learn from so that our people never want to leave us?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, and for me, that was a little bit of the essence of the book, is that if you want to understand, everyone wants to be a rock star. That's like the kind of top of every performance review. So let's look at the boss of all rock stars. I think you do that by understanding and respecting your audience, and really spending the time to understand who they are and spending the time to meet them where they are. And I will say, that's something which, Bruce has always done, is respecting the audience with whether it's by the length of his shows and how much he puts into it. He's not phoning it in. And the audience feels that, and they feel like they're getting their money's worth from the show. And it's something which, he does in the set list. He'll say that, he's got depression and anxiety. And he'll say that, that's why when he comes on stage, one of the things he does for every show is he tries to finish the job in the first 5 minutes. Make everyone feel like they got their money's worth in the first 5 minutes, and then he can relax. But understanding that and respecting your audience and respecting the folks you're working with, that's where it starts. As soon as you start separating yourself from them too much, and, I'm the CEO and this is just how it's going to be, that's when you start losing people. And you need to kind of remember, from whence you came and remember where those folks are.
It makes me, Chad, we think, hear Ben say all the time, like all of us around here are the janitor to the CEO. Like we're never too big. We can't forget where we came from. Like we're willing to go take the trash out and do all the things. And I think people connect with folks they can relate to. Like you can't relate. I don't know. I personally, Andy, I can't relate to the CEO that would not, empty the garbage can if it was full. Like I don't get that person, right?
There was a great leadership class years ago at Harvard Business School that had one question on the final exam. And, the professor had everyone in the class for 6 months. And the only question on the final exam was, tell me the name of the person that cleans this building. And the professor's point was, you guys are in here every day, and you have walked past this person every single day. Who's learned his name? Because as a leader, that's what matters. And I can tell you not just the names of my employees, though there are times when I think they're all named Caitlin. But I can also tell you the names of the people on the maintenance crew for our building and the people who are serving lunch down in the cafeteria, and all of the folks that support us and enable our business to be successful. You got to learn their names and show them appreciation as well, because you're not getting anywhere without that supporting cast.
Yeah, Chad, you've heard me share this, Andy. Our company has grown. When I started here, there was probably 8 of us, and now there's 1,200 of us. And I never really realized. I knew it, Chad, because of Scott Smith, but I didn't realize the impact I could have simply by walking down our halls and saying, hi, Jill. Hey, Fred, it's good to see you. Like that. I don't know. I didn't put a lot of stock in who I was in the company, even though it matters to these, to folks, right? Like just simply being seen matters. And it can be as simple as, like you said, like knowing the lady who's, doing the marketing or whatever it is. All you have to do is literally like acknowledge them. Now, if you take it to Bruce Springsteen, the extra step, and you say, hey, Jill, it's good to see you. Hey, I noticed that thing that you did, right? Like, then you start to really build
absolutely
loyal followers.
What Bruce is doing at the back of the stage, as I said, it's 10 seconds every night with a person. I mean, that is, very, very quick interaction and makes a huge difference.
But it's sustained over a long period of time, and he's committed to doing it, I think. And
absolutely.
So it's not that he did it once, it's that he made it a part of his routine, and he makes sure his people know that they're appreciated publicly, by the way.
We are what we do repetitively. So do the right things again and again and again. Figure it out. Folks, we've been talking with Andy Freed. You can find out more about Andy at his website. That's andyfreed.com, spelled just like his name. Nothing fancy.
Jealous, Chad. Chad knows, Andy, I get really jealous when somebody was able to grab their own name as a domain.
Yeah, I thought about it back in 2003.
Bob waited up at night to buy things whenever, and he never gets it. There's always another Bob Stewart feeding him to
better than that Super Bowl ad of, I can't remember who it was who couldn't find their domain name, but I did well in 03.
Luckily for me, I can wait 10 years after a site is launched and my domain name will still be available. I have not yet met another Chad Hyams out there. Folks, you can connect with Andy, follow Andy on all of his different platforms by going to his website. You can get the book there. You can get the book on Amazon. Check it out. Don't miss Lead Like the Boss. Andy, you were bringing it like the boss today. We appreciate you were on. You had that no set list. We just were going to figure out where we were going to go. You didn't get to plan that one. Yeah, you definitely brought the performance today. We appreciate you taking the time and joining us here on Win, Make, Give.
Hey,
if I give you one minute,
and I'll tell you that
one minute.
Your first question, despite the Courtney Cox appearance in the video, I got to go with Bob having the right answer of Jennifer Aniston.
Yeah. Well, we all agree. Jennifer Aniston. I think it was a hands down win. I'm glad you pulled back to that one. I'm going to give you 1 minute on the clock as I do, Andy, to our guests after we kind of get to the end. I don't care if you repeat something that was said already because it's on your heart and you want to share it again. I don't care if it's something that didn't even come up because our conversation didn't lead to it. But I'm putting you on the clock up to 1 minute. What do you want everyone to take away from?
More than anything, what I want people to take away is that leadership and communication are one and the same. You can't be a great leader without being a great communicator. And that's a skill that you can refine and you can hone and that you can work at. But it takes being intentional. And it takes the idea of making your communications really intentional, making the actions that you're taking as a leader really intentional, whether it's your body language as you're walking around the office, because when Bob talks about walking around and saying, hi, Jill, if Bob's looking pissed off and his, looking at his shoes, well, Jill might not take the same message around because Bob's performing as a leader at that moment. So that idea of intentionality and that idea that like communications really matters, that's more than anything what I want people to take away from today and take away from the book.
Excellent. We appreciate you taking the time to join us. Folks, I'm going to put it in Facebook when we drop this episode. Join us in our Facebook group, Win, Make, Give. Let us know your favorite Bruce Springsteen song because we want to know what it's going to be.
I feel like I'm going to add like 10 new Bruce Springsteen songs to my Spotify list here in the next 20 minutes.
Have fun with that, Bob Stewart. Folks, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss a single episode because you never know who we're bringing next. Until our next episode, as always, do good.